Welcome to Heartfelt Conversations, where we have discussions around human trafficking. And today I'm very, very excited because this is the very first episode where we get to have a guest and we will get to hear about what he does. And I don't want to preempt too much, but before we go very far, my name is Njeri Ragoy. I'm from HAART Kenya, and I'm here with my co-host, who I would like her to introduce herself.
My name is Winnie Mutevu, working with HAART Kenya as well. And I think, as Njeri has mentioned, today is our first episode, which will be going live. And we have, I think this has been a journey that's been taking place for more than 2 years, planning for it. And so being here today, we are very excited. Yes. And joined by us is the founder and CEO of HAART Kenya. And I think very happy to be able to learn about the journey. Why did he choose to found an NGO? Why not set up a business? Why is he here in Kenya? How has the journey been for him? And I think being able to really understand who Radoslaw Malinowski is as well.
Well, yes, thank you, and thank you to everybody who's listening, yes, and watching us. As it was said, I am Radek Malinowski. I am Polish by nationality. However, I've been in Kenya for some time, and most of my professional life has been in Kenya. So, well, I also feel quite at home here in this setup. A very important question, why I started this non-governmental organization. Of course, because I foreseen one day I will be sitting in the podcast, so I was like planning way ahead.
Yeah.
But jokes aside, I think it is, you always should, I mean, if you want to start something that is going to make a meaningful impact, you look for the needs. And I was privileged to join counter-trafficking movement very early. It was just after the Palermo Protocol, so that kind of the whole international community was getting up to start fighting human trafficking. Countries were just starting discussion about, okay, like how do we curb this crime, because trafficking is a crime. And there was debate who should be addressing this social problem. Obviously, the first entity that is the most important in any setup is always the government. It can be national government, local government. Well, I'm not the government, very important, so I was excluded from that. The government of Kenya is always the most important entity that works against trafficking. However, it is well known and is well accepted globally that the interventions from the government are not enough. They must be supported by society, and non-governmental organizations are like a channels of that reaction of the society. Non-governmental organizations are somehow a civil society that gives a voice and enables people to actively support the efforts of the government. And that's, I think, is done globally. It's not a Kenyan or African or East African idea. It is globally in every country in the world. You have a government agency, you have police, immigration, whoever is in charge from the government fighting human trafficking, plus us, people who willingly join campaigns and try to change the life of individuals and stop people from being trafficked. Why we started that? Because also in that time, it has changed, but in that time we had a feeling that the number of projects that actually they lack consistency. There were projects, not organizations. They were started and stopped. While I believed that, and I still believe that, if you want to be effective in handling this very complex human trafficking phenomenon, because this is very complex crime, it is very complex type of migration, it is also very complex abuse of human rights. You see, I already mentioned 3 very complex areas. You cannot effectively engage from time to time. You must rather commit yourself, and that is the story of HAART. A constant, stable, sustainable commitment to end one of the biggest crimes of our time, one of our biggest abuses of human rights. And I like that phrase, it is something that is a crime that shames us all. So we are answering that, we are the call to end that shame.
Yeah. And many people hear the word heart. First, they think it's the heart of, the heart. But how did you settle? Because there's power in a name. How did you settle on heart and what?
Absolutely. Actually, as you can hear by now, English is not my first language. So when I was writing the name, I made a spelling mistake, and that's from heart. But the truth is that we are trying to find a way to come close to heart, because human trafficking is a crime And if you want to respond, you have to use not only your mind, your brain, but exactly you have to use something here. Okay? It's like a journey from a brain to your heart. And that heart component is extremely important. If you don't put your will, if you don't put your emotion, and if you don't pull your passion, you won't be successful. And that's all HAART about.
Great. Maybe the question that I would be asking would be, you are a Pole. What led you to set this up in Kenya?
North Pole or South Pole?
Oh, well, you're Polish. So what led you to come to the country that is along the equator? What led you to Kenya? Why is HAART in Kenya and not in Poland?
Very good question, yes. Why Kenya is special on the map of human trafficking? Actually, sure, I was not starting my journey in counter trafficking in Kenya. Actually, it was in Malawi, then it was South Africa on the way. So rather southern part of the continent. I was a volunteer. I was working as a young lawyer. I had experience of working with the church on those issues. But then I got a scholarship opportunity. I got a chance to finish studies or continue my studies here and domesticate them because my law experience was from abroad. And I had a chance to come here only to realize that actually we didn't have any a very key word, like institutional, proper, sustainable project on human trafficking. We had, as I said, projects who were coming and going. At the same time, Kenya was like a center, hub, transit point for people who are trafficked, not only locally, but also regionally. And in that time, I think it's constantly changing. In that time, we had few countries that were famous for being hotspots on the map of trafficking in Africa. That was South Africa, obviously, who was acting as a magnet for the people around. That was Nigeria in the west, together with Ghana, Libya, Algeria, and Egypt, and of course in the east, it was Kenya. That is why Kenya became my destination place.
Happy to have you here. Do you know the national anthem now that you have saved?
You don't want me to sing. You will have a drastic collapse of views if you force me to sing on that. Trust me.
I will choose to trust you. But moving on swiftly, let's speak about HAART as an organization. One of the key factors to have in an organization is, of course, to have a team to implement and a board to oversee. Maybe you can touch a bit on that. How does that look like?
Well, like any organization, you must have a certain way of dealing with things, so you have to approach them from the organized point of view. Also, you have to comply with the law of the land. So already Kenya has a certain setup for organizations, how they operate, how they must function, about how they are institutionally structured. And Kenya is also insisting on certain qualities and values, for example, inclusiveness and proper implementation of the values that are in Constitution. Our team, I would say, is one of the strongest point of our work, and because over the years we managed to develop a committed, knowledgeable, skilled team that actually professionalized on fighting human trafficking, that is composed of people from different backgrounds. We have people who are coming from social sciences, psychologists. We have people who are coming from low degrees, from people who studied finance and administration, and also survivors of human trafficking. Very important, because their presence is precious, and we really feel privileged that we can have space for them, and then they're also happy to work with us, that they decided to be part of our family, because their experience is extremely important. And that is also reflected in our board composition. The board that oversees our work, it's well balanced. We have committed team of people who are coming from different background. We have government workers, we have lawyers, we have people from civil society, we have a person from media society who is in communication, like you in Jerry. We also have people who are with a very specific background. We have a survivor of human trafficking, and we have also a person who is a refugee here in Kenya. And we have Christians, we have Muslims, we have people who are from different background, but they have one goal: to commit to fight human trafficking.
A very inclusive board, and I think also a very complex way of being able to approach the issue of human trafficking. Maybe what would you say are the key milestones and achievements that you're proud of as an organization?
Well, definitely the fact that we are able to operate and be consistent in the way we operate for the past 14 years. Actually, next year, in 2025, we are to celebrate 15 years of our organization. There's already a milestone in itself. I think we achieved a number of important moments in our organizations that we're able to be proud of. But I think like coming back to the core and initial idea, I think every person that we offer support to is a milestone. So I wouldn't go saying that because we publish a report or somebody got an award in our organization, that is a milestone. I don't think so. That's not important. What is important is like every time we were able to assist and journey together with somebody who was terribly abused by others, traffickers, and we are able to journey with that person, so that person is able to rebalance and find a new, proper, enriching way of engaging with others and able to flourish and actually go in a tremendous way in terms of human development. Every time this happens, there's our milestone.
Yeah, and I like what you said, that every life that we touch is very impactful. And the dichotomy of life is where there are milestones and highlights, there are challenges. What have been some of the challenges you've seen over the years that you could, probably highlight today?
Well, like any organization, we are operating in a certain society. So the challenges the society is facing also our challenges. The economic situation sometimes is growing. Sometimes we experience a challenge, and poverty and loss of income, crisis affect immediately people who are our clients, our beneficiaries. Also, the issue of security can be a huge challenge for organizations like HAART, and we can only minimize that. We don't have a structured way of dealing with risks. Nobody has. We can minimize them. We try to implement some protocols, systems, way of behaviors, but still the risk all remains, and that is challenge in its own. And finally, I would say one of the biggest challenges I foresee that is with us and will be with us is that changing nature of human trafficking. It is not something that is happening the same way. It's the patterns of trafficking, purposes of trafficking, why people get trafficked, and transit roads and so on, they are actually making us constantly to adapt, which is also a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think those are very complex, and it's a question of how then we get to overcome, and maybe not to dwell on that on today's episode. We'll be able to look into that in future episodes, but just maybe looking into the work that then NGOs get to do. As a founder and as a CEO, what would you say are the misconceptions that we have around what NGOs get to do in our society?
Okay, I would rather speak even about CSOs, because next to NGOs you have FBOs and you have CBOs. All of them, they might have a different structure, but actually they often do a similar work. Well, we all play subsidiary role, important. We are to support the government, to support the host that is fighting this crime. We of course expect to be coordinated, and we expect that there's a certain level of cohesion between us and a certain direction. This is happening. We've been having a national plan of actions that they were implemented. About the expectations is that I think the biggest challenge that often comes when it comes to work is like that people do watch Hollywood movies, and they think that counter trafficking is about you moving with your gun and rescuing people from the places, and actually being like somebody who is able to jump from the third floor and drive a car that has a burning tire and eventually keep shooting with your left leg and right hand at the same time. It doesn't work like that, okay? Human trafficking requires, first of all, stability in terms of response. consistency and focus. And the person who is doing a computer work, constantly adding information to the database, the importance of that work is the same as if somebody who is actively rescuing the same victim. And I think we need to acknowledge that. I always like to say that when I was a bit younger, my daughter one day accompanied me to a TV station, and there was a question asked. She was 6 years old in that time, and she was asked a question, do you know what your dad is doing? And my daughter said, my dad is doing nothing. He just sits a whole day in front of the computer and he stares at the monitor. That's his job. Yeah. But it's true. That's part of counter-trafficking.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, I like how you brought in the aspect of your daughter, because as a founder and CEO, it means that there's a lot on your desk. So how are you able to have that balance between self-care, family, and the work you do in counter-trafficking?
Well, it's nothing special to have a family. I mean, we do all have families. We get married. We find partners. We find a way of that family, and of course, I don't think I'm the proper person to talk about balancing, because it is a job of everyday life. You know, I mean, all of us, majority of us, we have that experience, and I think we are experts in that. Yeah, yes, you do. I have a family. Yes, I do have a family. I have children. I have one wife. Yes, and we are all somehow able to, live a life that actually, I'm trying to separate my family life from professional life. Yeah.
Well, what then do you hope will be the lasting impact when it comes to the work that you're doing with HAART Kenya?
We can close the organization because there's no need for trafficking, counter-trafficking. That will be my wish. So we can close it because there are no more cases of trafficking.
Well, which is a dream, and hopefully we get to achieve a world where we don't have criminals who just want to do bad things. I think just looking into us being able to wrap up, when it comes to the space, HAART has been here for more than a decade. What do you see as the focus for the organization in the next coming 10 years?
A very good question. First of all, focus must be related to what is changing in the counter-trafficking, or rather, what is changing in the traffic environment. Because we do react to the crime, and we try to prevent the crime, but the crime itself is changing. The way people are trafficked, the way the needs for trafficking is also very dynamic. Our focus right now, we acknowledge more and more the current dynamics, for example, climate change. Climate change causes changes in the weather patterns. Weather pattern affects people's lifestyle, and whole community life changes, makes people more vulnerable to human trafficking. So there's a linkage. The changes in culture, the rapid shifts from traditional societies to globalized societies. Needless to say, the turmoils in the global economies, all of this puts pressure, increases vulnerability to trafficking. And our focus is to be more professional, to be able to become more specialized in those specific areas of interventions.
Great. So in case you're following us and watching this conversation and you have further questions, you can always send them on our comment section on our YouTube channel at HAART Kenya, which, by the way, we are on all social media platforms as HAART Kenya, and it would be great to hear your feedback and questions on this. So as we wrap up, Radek, what's your final remarks or parting shot? Or if you have a quote, shout out, you want to dance?
I'm not very good with quotes. There are many inspiring quotes, but I would say, just follow us on this channel and then get interested in the whole counter-trafficking. There are many other organizations like us working. There are also many great people, great initiatives. You can be inspired not only by quotes, but also by the life. And I always encourage people to dig into that problem, so we can say one day that we are able to kick out slavery. Now it's time for us to kick out trafficking out of our society.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Radek. It's been great having you here. And thank you for listening to us here on Heartfelt Conversations. Till next time, let's keep it a society free from trafficking.